Every day, thousands of steel wheels roll over hundreds of miles of welded rail in eastern Washington state, carrying raw materials and goods bound for distant destinations. BNSF's Northern Transcon passes golden fields of wheat, grass hay, and other crops found in the rolling hills between Pasco and Spokane. Welcome to BNSF's Lakeside Sub. Stretching nearly 150 miles across the Evergreen State, the Lakeside Subdivision sees over 50 trains per day, and traffic continues to increase. Our tour begins at the busy hump yard in Pasco, where hundreds of cars from all over the nation are classified. Then we turn east as trains roll past thousands of acres of farmland, dotted with small towns and big grain elevators. Trains put on a great show climbing Providence Hill, and rolling through Marshall Canyon in the snow. The Lakeside Sub sees unit coal, grain and oil trains, as well as mixed manifests and intermodal trains running between Portland, Oregon and Chicago. With more trains to run comes a need for more power, and BNSF is sporting some great consists of leased locomotives. Montana Rail Link even gets into the act with an officer's special. Although not as well known as the nearby funnel, this stretch of track sees a lot of great mainline action. Join us now for East to Spokane, BNSF's Lakeside Sub. The Lakeside Subdivision traverses the rolling hills of eastern Washington state, beginning at SP&S Junction just west of Pasco Yard. The railroad heads compass north through Eltopia, Connell, Cunningham, and up the west side of Providence Hill to Beatrice. After cresting the summit of the 1% grade, it's a downhill run to Lind. Trains then climb a slight 0.77% grade through Paha and Essig before arriving at Ritzville. The line continues eastward through Tokio, Keystone, and Sprague, then up the hill to a new siding at Lamphier, Fishtrap, Cheney, and through Marshall Canyon before arriving at Sunset Junction in Spokane. It's 4:30 a.m. at Pasco, Washington, beside the smooth, dark waters of the Columbia River. What was once a campsite for the Lewis and Clark expedition in October of 1805 has grown thanks to agriculture and access to both river and rail transportation. The Columbia River drawbridge is silhouetted in the early morning light. The through-truss bridge was built by the Northern Pacific and spans 2,587 feet across the Columbia. The Lakeside Sub officially begins at SP&S Junction, just off the bridge to our right. Our first train of the day has just come through the junction as it crosses the river and heads for Pasco Yard. This train has just completed a nighttime run through the scenic Columbia River Gorge. It may have originated in Vancouver, Washington, or perhaps down in Barstow, California, utilizing BNSF's Inside Gateway route through Klamath Falls, Oregon. Now, the train enters Pasco as the crew reaches the end of their workday. We cross the river into Pasco Yard just as the sun peeks over the horizon. It's about 60 degrees on this early July morning, but by midday, the temperature will climb to nearly 100. A pair of SD40-2s kick a tank car while doing some flat switching at the west end of BNSF's busy classification yard. Around 50 trains per day come through Pasco, and several originate and terminate at this facility. Manifests from the east, such as Kansas City, Galesburg, Dilworth, Great Falls, and Minot, and destinations to the south and west like Barstow, Riverbank, Klamath Falls, and Tacoma. The yard tower is situated between the hump and bowl tracks, as it has been since the days of the Northern Pacific. Pasco Yard was built by the NP in 1884, and the hump was added in 1955. Cars are pushed over a man-made incline, uncoupled, and allowed to roll down into the bowl, which is a series of tracks containing cars headed for different destinations. The speed of each car is controlled by retarders on the track to ensure a soft coupling with the other cars in the bowl. When a train is made up, locomotives are added, and it heads for the departure track and eventually on the main line to its next destination. A pair of empty center beams head down to the bowl tracks as a series of coil cars are pushed over the hump. We speed up the camera to give you a better idea of the process. A Wisconsin Central hopper car rolls into the bowl consisting of 47 classification tracks, all computer controlled. A former Santa Fe GP50 wearing BNSF colors and the number 3186 heads through the busy yard. While more cars shuffle through the yard, BNSF 6889 West leads a loaded grain shuttle on the main track near the bowl. It's fun to watch it seemingly chasing the loose cars around the yard. Moving to Pasco East, milepost 140.2 on the Lakeside sub, a set of light engines are coming out of the yard toward the main. The lead unit is a GE ES44C4, delivered to the BNSF in 2011, and part of a growing fleet of C4s on the locomotive roster. Behind it are two of the still very common -9 44CWs. These three General Electric units are a good representation of the type of road power common on BNSF's 24,000 miles of mainline track running through 27 states. After departing Pasco, the Lakeside sub heads compass north through irrigated farmland in the fertile valley to the east of the Columbia River. This eastbound manifest is passing milepost 134 between Glade and Eltopia as it rolls along the fairly level track. A good portion of the Lakeside sub is single track, with 8,100-foot sidings. With the increase of coal and crude oil traffic on BNSF's northern Transcon, an effort is being made to increase capacity. Sidings are being lengthened, and sections of double track extended to ease congestion. Eventually, the BNSF plans to double track the entire subdivision. Currently, the line is in a state of transition, and during our visits in the spring and summer of 2014, we were able to witness a lot of progress, as 20 miles of new track was laid and put into service. Just west of Eltopia, BNSF 5795 East leads a mixed manifest train on its run to Laurel, Montana. Eltopia is the first siding east of Pasco and is 8,100 feet in length. The first eastbound manifest we saw near Glade is in the hole for a westbound grain shuttle. Traffic passes on nearby Highway 395 on a hot afternoon. With the temperature near the 100-degree mark, two GEs, an ES-44C4, and a Dash 9 take the loaded grain train west. A third remote-controlled Dash 9 brings up the rear. It's a cool spring morning in early March. The low sun illuminates an eastbound Q train led by BNSF 5397 as it approaches a high-speed curve at Mesa. Long segments of rail have been placed on either side of the track here, and a steel gang will soon replace the existing rail. The Portland section of Amtrak's Empire Builder rounds a curve at Mesa. The westbound number 7 is split at Spokane, with a shorter number 7 continuing to Seattle via Stevens Pass, while number 27, seen here, heads for Portland, Oregon via Pasco and the scenic Columbia River Gorge. The eastbound counterparts 8 and 28 reverse the process at Spokane on their journey to Chicago. Originally called Bluff Wells, Mesa was established in 1883 as a station stop for the Northern Pacific Railroad. Like most communities in eastern Washington, elevators mark the skyline. A westbound stack train for Portland, Oregon blows through town on the 60-mile-per-hour track. Just east of Mesa, a red over green or diverging clear shows for an eastbound at the new control point of West Cactus. The 8,100-foot siding has just been lengthened to a 5.6-mile-long double-track main. New switches and signals have been added and put into service within the past couple of days. We get a surprise this afternoon. Brand new MRL 4408 leads a Montana Rail Link Officer Special bound for Missoula, Montana. The 4408 is the newest locomotive on the Regional Railroad's roster. The train is returning from a trip to Vancouver, British Columbia. A farmer rakes a field of grass hay located along the main line at Cactus. Just to the east is a rock quarry, which is kept busy with all the track work being done on the Lakeside sub. This is also the former location of the east switch of Cactus, which has now been extended toward Connell. A westbound stack train slowly approaches the rock pit at Cactus, working through a big S-curve. Dash 9 number 4613 leads the train, and leased CREX 1214 lends a hand. BNSF is in the middle of a power shortage and has put in a large order of several hundred new locomotives. While the railroad awaits delivery, it has leased engines from other railroads and leasing companies such as City Rail. The result is an interesting variety of power, greatly appreciated by rail fans. Connell is located at milepost 109.7 at the junction with the Columbia Basin Railway, a short line based in Yakima, Washington. Cars located in the small yard here are interchanged with the BNSF. A westbound rock train heads through Connell with loads from the Missile Base rock pit west of Cheney. On a different day, we catch the Columbia Basin Railway taking a short train out of Connell. Two vintage EMDs are in charge. A chop-nose SD9 and GP7 lug the train up the hill above the BNSF mainline. Down below, an eastbound rounds a curve on the single-track main near milepost 106 after departing Connell. The railroad runs through a small canyon or coulee, surrounded by wheat fields as it begins its ascent up the west side of Providence Hill. The grade starts out at around 0.7% and increases to 1% near the summit. The day is nearly over, and we find ourselves at a grade crossing at Hatton. A nearby coyote calls. Looking west, A headlight appears as the Montana Rail Link Officer Special is seen again behind the MRL 4408. This section of double track has also recently been added, with a north track closest to us extended from the other side of the overpass to a new control point at Hatton. A westbound coal train approaches on the new track. This is train CSXM RBE with 126 loads from the Signal Peak mine in Montana and is bound for the Roberts Bank Export Terminal in British Columbia, Canada. It breaks a tape measure at 6,973 feet and weighs in at over 18,000 tons. A heat wash pours from the Big GE's dynamic brake fans as the heavy train is brought down the hill. The remote-controlled DP unit crosses under a new signal bridge as the train winds through the Providence coulee to Connell. The word coulee refers to a small valley or drainage zone. The Northern Pacific found this to be the easiest route for a railroad over Providence Hill. An eastbound empty grain train approaches Hatton at 10 p.m. on a nighttime run to Spokane. A windmill stands in a field above the tracks at Cunningham, as CREX 1209 leads an eastbound manifest up Providence Hill. A short time later, a second manifest led by BNSF 7583 passes the grain elevators at Cunningham. At Cunningham, the grade increases to nearly 1%. While not considered a mountain grade, trains do put on a good show as they climb the hill. Although most people associate Washington with apples, the eastern part of the state is known for its wheat fields, as well as alfalfa, potatoes, and other crops. In 2012, Washington's food and agriculture industry topped $49 billion. Apples were the biggest commodity, and the second was wheat. Nearing the summit of Providence Hill, this eastbound manifest passes several fields bearing different crops at Beatrice. It's a hot summer afternoon near the grain elevators at Beatrice, located right along the BNSF main line near milepost 93. An eastbound coal train is returning from Roberts Bank, BC to the coal fields in Wyoming's Powder River Basin. The engineer gives us a friendly wave from the cab of BNSF 4300 as it rolls by. Although this train is empty, it is using distributed power. A remote-controlled DP unit shoves the rear of the train up over Providence Hill. It is controlled by the engineer in the lead locomotive. Another westbound has just crested the summit of Providence Hill and approaches the crossovers at station sign Beatrice, milepost 90.8. The lead unit is an EMD SD75I built in 1997, still in its original Santa Fe war bonnet colors. The former BNSF 8293 has been given a 3-digit number by dropping the 8. The 8200 numbers are being reused for part of a new order of C4 locomotives that are arriving on the BNSF. The train continues down the west side as we move to the summit of the grade just west of Providence. BNSF 5094 East takes a manifest train around a large curve, reaching the summit as it comes through a small cut bank near our location. As the engines pass, they begin a 7-mile downgrade of 0.6%, ending near the community of Lind. BNSF 5642 West leads another loaded grain train over the summit. As the train approaches Beatrice, it meets an eastbound mixed merchandise train. If the power looks familiar, it should. We shot the same two engines taking a train west to Pasco at about the same time the day before. Providence is located just east of Summit. Amtrak 28 slaloms down the hill behind Heritage Unit number 145, sporting classic red, white, and blue stripes. The white bags along the tracks contain tie clips that will be used to fasten the new rail to the concrete ties. The sun dips low in the western sky after another hot day in eastern Washington. In the golden hour, BNSF 5522 leads another westbound grain train up the east side of Providence Hill. The 4 big GEs, including one Canadian Pacific unit, put on a great show while pumping out a combined 17,560 horsepower. During our March visit, construction of the second main line between Sand and Lind was underway. This would give the BNSF a double-track line all the way over Providence Hill, and was one of several springtime projects to extend the badly needed second main on the Lakeside sub. In addition to the construction here at Sand, double track was being extended to the west at Hatton and Cactus, and to the east at Tokio, a brand new siding near Missile Base, and a second main line from Babb through Cheney. Daytime traffic was often delayed by work windows, which allow crews safe access to the main line. An eastbound grain empty has been given permission to come through a work area and is seen passing the control point at milepost 84.9. As the train reaches the bottom of the grade, it passes the former Milwaukee Road Bridge near Lind. There isn't much left of the structure that once carried the Milwaukee Road over the Northern Pacific and later the Burlington Northern. The line through here was scrapped in 1979, shortly before the company faded into history. From the top of the 100-year-old ruins, we catch a westbound BNSF grain train as it rolls through Lind and begins its climb up over Providence Hill. Moving down into Lind, BNSF 7277 leads an intermodal train west through the future control point of West Lind on the 18th day of March 2014. As this scene was shot, the double-track main ended up on the hill at Sand. The current project for 2014 would bring the second main line down to these grain elevators at Lind. Where the dump truck is currently parked, in a few months will be new signals governing a new switch. Fast forwarding to July, the work is complete as an eastbound manifest passes under the Milwaukee Road Bridge and into Lind on the brand new number 2 main. The next siding to the east is Paha, which is a standard 8,100 feet in length. At the west end, BNSF 9719 leads a manifest for Pasco. Paha was established in 1886 with the coming of the railroad and is midway between Lind and Ritzville. A post office existed here until 1943. Up the hill from Paha is a siding of Essig, which is 8,800 feet in length. The railroad climbs a 0.77% grade out of the canyon and through a double S-curve before arriving at Ritzville. BNSF 8218, a brand new GE ES44C4, is in charge of a work train taking railroad ties east. A major tie replacement project is currently underway on BNSF's Fallbridge sub in the Columbia River Gorge. Ritzville is situated in the middle of eastern Washington's wheat country and plays a big role in getting the wheat from farm to market via the BNSF. These amber waves of grain are most likely headed for your breakfast table. Established in 1880 with the coming of the Northern Pacific, Ritzville attracted wheat farmers from South Dakota, as well as a colony of Russian Germans. It became a central shipping point for the wheat-growing region and has since expanded to handle the large grain shuttle trains of today. BNSF 8079 leads a colorful locomotive consist, including CSX, Norfolk Southern, and a vintage Burlington Northern GP50 west through town. A point of interest in Ritzville is the Northern Pacific Depot built in 1910. Although Amtrak does not stop here, it is open to the public as the Railroad Depot History Museum. Trains running through Ritzville are dwarfed by the grain elevators that mark the centerpiece of the community. BNSF 4320 West leads a loaded Bakken crude oil train through town. It's 5:30 a.m. on the 9th day of July. We are greeted by a red sunrise thanks to forest fires burning throughout the state. Set up near the Ritzville Grain Reload Facility, BNSF 5426 West slowly approaches after rolling over the new west switch of Tokio, milepost 62.4. Like Cactus, it has gone from an 8,100-foot siding to a double-track main just over 4 miles in length. Amtrak 27 is right behind the manifest and slowly follows it west. At 5:43 a.m., this will be the last train of the day, as a 12-hour work window goes into effect, shutting down the railroad. The sun still looks the same, but now it is in the western sky as traffic begins to move again on the Lakeside sub. A westbound grain shuttle meets the eastbound Amtrak 28 at Tokio. As the Empire Builder heads for the clear signal at East Tokio, milepost 57.8, another day of rail fanning comes to a close with a brilliant sunset. By sunrise the next morning, we are at milepost 56.1 and the Tokyo Semstream Liquid Propane Industrial Aid. It is serviced by the Lind Turn, a local that works west of Spokane. The big tanks in the background belong to C&F Industries, a manufacturer and distributor of fertilizers, and is also served by the local. Looking west, a signal hut for the Hills Road crossing glows in the morning sun, as BNSF 4633 leads an empty grain train past the Tokyo elevators on its way to Spokane. The 4633 met a westbound coal train at Keystone, the next siding to the east. and soon we see it, rounding the curve under the auburn sky. From milepost 51 at Keystone, the CNF Industries tanks shimmer in the midday heat. With the summer sun high overhead, the temperature is in the upper 90s. The headlight of an eastbound dances in the heat waves as a train approaches, rolling over numerous rises and dips in the 60-mile-per-hour track. Between Keystone and Sprague, the railroad drops down a slight 0.5% grade as it passes Sprague Lake and the Four Seasons Campground. BNSF 7423 heads east with a Q train bound for Chicago. A wheat farm makes a nice backdrop for the railroad along the siding of Sprague on a March afternoon. Revisiting the area in July, the green fields greatly complement the red barns and sheds. Train HPAS KCK heads east through the scene. This train originated in Pasco and is bound for the former Santa Fe Argentine Yard in Kansas City, Kansas. The train rounds a curve with the elevators of Sprague in the distance. BNSF 5090 West leads a manifest through town and past the siding of Old Sprague at milepost 41.1. Sprague was named for Civil War Union General John W. Sprague, who was later an executive with the Northern Pacific and co-founder of the city of Tacoma, Washington. Today, this town has a population of around 400. An interesting attraction is this collection of vintage trucks from the 1930s, 40s, and 50s sitting on a lot called Dave's Old Truck Rescue. Most of these were hard-working farm trucks that in one way or another helped feed the nation during and after World War II. Dodge, GMC, International, Ford, and Chevy are all represented here, thanks to the efforts of a local collector. Transitioning from something old to something new, these intermediate signals guard the approach to the siding of Sprague, as well as a new siding of Lamphier. The G or grade plate on the mast is for eastbound trains. It indicates this signal is on a grade, and trains have permission to pass a red signal here at restricted speed without stopping and running the risk of a pull-apart on the hill. With another smoky sunset in the west, Amtrak 28 departs Sprague and heads up the 1% grade towards Spokane. Right behind Amtrak, the Lind turn takes a cut of loaded grain hoppers up the hill out of Old Sprague. Two SD60Ms and a cabless GP60B pull the train up the grade. BNSF 7389 East leads train HPAS BRC up the hill on its eastbound trip to Chicago. Moving to the top of the hill, a pair of bucks carefully cross the main and check out the new sighting at Lamphier. Deer are plentiful in eastern Washington and are quite common around farmland where good grazing is to be found. The bucks take off into a nearby field, and now we see that there are actually 5 of them. A westbound manifest is heard approaching, and while we'd like to tell you they were spooked by the approaching train, you probably know better. The train rounds the curve and starts down the hill toward Sprague. Lamphier is a brand new siding that was just put into service. During our visit in March, this is what the east end looked like. Signals were being installed, and contractors were busy burying cable along the main between Sprague and Missile Base in preparation for the new 10,600-foot siding. Transitioning back to July, we can see the completed east switch and signals in place, guarding the new siding of Lamphier. Everything is new, from the switch motors and heaters to the newly designed swing nose frog, which is supposed to last longer and be easier to maintain than a traditional frog. A meet is about to take place at the new siding. BNSF 6590 West leads train C-SXM RBE, another coal train from the Signal Peak mine north of Billings, Montana. The train has 119 loads and weighs in at 16,882 tons. It is 6,317 feet in length. As the train passes, we can see an eastbound waiting in the new siding. After the coal train, the BNSF 4778 East gets a light and departs Lamphier. Lamphier is located west of the Missile Base rock quarry. The name comes from a nearby missile silo that dates back to the Cold War. The silo is no longer in use. BNSF trains load daily at the quarry, which has been busy thanks to the expansion on the Lakeside sub. East of Missile Base, the single-track main continues to climb up the hill to Fishtrap, as does an eastbound with a great mix of pull power. CREX 1213 leads the charge. Just after sunrise in the cool of the morning, we set up along a hayfield just downhill from Fishtrap. An intermodal train heads west. Later on, a westbound rock train heads for the Missile Base quarry. A short, lind turn passes West Fishtrap. The final edition of Double Track is found from Babb through Cheney. This is another former 8,100-foot siding that has been converted to a double-track main. New, freshly installed switches, mechanisms, and signals are interesting to see on a railroad that is growing and thriving. One of the reasons for the upgrades is coming right at us. BNSF 5008 West is in charge of another crude oil train from the Bakken oil fields in North Dakota and is bound for export on the West Coast. The 102-car train rolls over the new switch at Babb. Cheney is milepost 16.6 on the Lakeside sub. It was named for the director of the Northern Pacific, Benjamin P. Cheney. Large grain elevators tell of the importance of agriculture to the community. However, the biggest draw is education, thanks to the nearby Eastern Washington University. Cheney was once a booming railroad town, and the old Northern Pacific Depot still stands today along the main line. Although its future is on shaky ground, an effort is underway to save the 1927 depot from demolition. This is what Cheney looked like just a few months before. Track 2 was a wide spot alongside the main. Power for the short line Eastern Washington Gateway is spotted on a spur track near where it connects to the BNSF. An eastbound grain shuttle rolls through town. Returning to July, the new eastbound track is in place, and a grain train glides over the new rails. After departing Cheney, trains enter Marshall Canyon. The wide-open country has been replaced by a pine forest, and snow is on the ground as BNSF 5531 East approaches the Marshall Avenue crossing. The Union Pacific enters the picture in Marshall Canyon via the Ayers Subdivision, which runs north of their classification yard in Hinkle, Oregon. UP 5511 North leads an empty grain train bound for the Canadian border at Eastport, Idaho, and will soon enter the BNSF at Lakeside Junction. Looking the other direction, we can see where the BNSF flies over the UP. This train is actually on the former Spokane, Portland, and Seattle track as it runs through this cut. The original UP grade is on another cut out of view to the left. The UP, NP, and SP&S all built through Marshall Canyon to gain access to Spokane. BNSF high rail truck heads for Cheney above the grain train. Returning on a different day, a local heads for Spokane after picking up cars from the Eastern Washington Gateway. One of the scenic highlights of Marshall Canyon is the curve at Scribner on BNSF's Spokane Subdivision. We are now west of Lakeside Junction, where the railroad splits into two different routes through the canyon, known as the High Line and the Low Line. UP 5513 South leads a trackage rights train on the High Line toward the junction with the Ayers Sub. This route is UP's connection with the Canadian Pacific. Grain, potash, and mixed manifest trains are interchanged with the CP at Eastport, Idaho, and it is not uncommon to see Canadian Pacific locomotives on these trains. CP 9367 applies power to the rear of the train as it approaches Lakeside Junction, just west of here. An eastbound BNSF manifest is seen on the Lakeside subdivision working between Lakeside Junction and Marshall on the other side of the small valley. Traffic can be busy in the canyon, with several trains working in and out of Spokane. As the manifest disappears, BNSF 8030 West rounds the curve with 111 loaded grain hoppers bound for Interbay, Washington. The train comes to a stop at Lakeside Junction to wait for another eastbound to clear before getting a signal through Cheney. Within minutes, an empty grain train appears on the far track. The 8030 West gets a light, and the nearly 16,000-ton train begins to roll. The rear cars bunch up as the train's DP, a Dash 9, applies its 4,400 horsepower to the back of the grain shuttle. Scribner is milepost 81 on the Spokane sub. BNSF 9854 East appears to be running the wrong way as it takes the Scribner connection between the high line and the low line. Eastbound BNSF trains are not normally routed this way through the canyon. As the train starts down the connector track, we realize why it's headed this direction. Several coal hoppers contain the Portland Rose logo, indicating this is a PGE coal train returning from the Portland General Electric Power Plant near Boardman, Oregon, along the UP. This is the normal route for Union Pacific trains coming off the AR sub. The UP crew aboard this train will hand it back to the BNSF at Empire, just west of Spokane. After the coal train clears, the Lind turn heads through Scribner with two SD40-2s and a GP60B. Marshall is milepost 9.3 on the Lakeside sub. The old Northern Pacific grade through the canyon is known as the low line. The middle track is a connection coming down the hill from Scribner. CP 8764 is on the Spokane sub, or high line, as it takes a loaded grain train west through the canyon. This is train G KDS TAC and is bound for Tacoma, Washington. It has 111 loads and tips the scales at 15,801 tons. It is 6,592 feet long. The Washington and Idaho Railroad connects to the BNSF at Marshall and operates over former Northern Pacific tracks between here and Moscow, Idaho. A pair of former Cotton Belt GE B40-8s in UP paint take care of the switching duties this morning, as BNSF 7840 East brings an empty grain train down the low line. During a winter visit to Marshall, another eastbound heads down the hill towards Spokane. As the train continues east, a nearby defect detector announces an approaching train on the High Line.
SF detector, milepost 76.9, no defects. Repeat, no defects. Detector out.
Continuing east on the low line, BNSF 7224 leads a vehicle train down the 1.15% grade toward Latah Creek on a cool spring morning. The High Line is hidden in the trees a few hundred yards away. And eastbound slowly climbs toward Sunset Junction at Empire. Empire is the last siding encountered on the Lakeside sub and hangs on a shelf of the canyon above Latah Creek. This train will stop here and wait for a westbound before continuing into Spokane. The westbound in question is UP 5505, leading a potash train between Eastport, Idaho and Portland, Oregon. It is crossing the Latah Creek Bridge on the Spokane sub. A BNSF fire train waits on the bridge at Latah Junction for the UP to pass. traffic on Interstate 90 shuffle in and out of Spokane, while the potash train heads for Marshall Canyon. The train at Empire gets a signal and begins to pull. The fire train also gets a light and heads towards Spokane. It is coming off the Columbia River sub from Wenatchee, where it has been battling a large wildfire in the area. It is July 12th, and several wildfires are currently raging north and west of Wenatchee in northern Washington, and are partly to blame for the red sunrises and sunsets we've been seeing along the way. Moving to the other side of the bridge, a westbound crosses over Latah Creek as it departs Spokane. An eastbound Q train is seen below the Latah Creek Bridge at Empire as it crosses over Interstate 90 and approaches Sunset Junction. As it continues to shuffle into town, our last train of the day, BNSF 9722 West, takes the High Line out of Spokane for an evening run to Pasco. This angle allows you to appreciate the height of the bridge. Since the 1880s, the Northern Pacific route between Pasco and Spokane has been an important link to the Pacific Northwest. With today's increase of export traffic comes a need for greater capacity, and the railroad is working hard to handle the record number of trains that travel BNSF's Lakeside sub. We hope you've enjoyed your tour of this seldom visited line and look forward to returning again as the railroad continues to expand. Until next time, thanks for watching.